Episode 2 of Unpopular Opinion Friday. So this was meant to be out 2 weeks ago, but the more I looked into the topic, the more down a rabbit hole I went. So I'm going to try and keep it as plain and simple as possible and as on topic as possible. So I think 2 weeks ago I mentioned, should obesity related illnesses be treated on the NHS? Before I get to my personal opinion, let's go through a few facts and figures first. So first off, what is obesity? I'm going to read this from the NHS website, just so we don't get our wires crossed. So obesity-related illnesses are currently treated on the NHS, which sees obesity as a complex, chronic disease. So basically, rather than just personal choice, anything from heart disease, diabetes, and stroke, and the current cost of obesity-related treatments on the NHS was 6.1 billion in 2015, and it's expected to rise to 9.7 billion per year by 2050. So the idea that obesity is nothing more than lazy people sitting on their bum all day and eating too much food is incorrect. I wouldn't say it's wildly incorrect, but it is incorrect. We've also got to understand, what do the NHS class people as, or when do they class people as obese? They use body mass index. I'm not a fan of body mass index with my clients, especially athletes, as most of them do come classed as overweight and obese, even though they are in their low digits body fat, but they just hold a lot more muscle tissue than Joe Public. And the referral criteria, treatment and specialized support is available for those with a BMI over 35 or 30 with relevant comorbidities. So again, it's hard to actually pinpoint when does somebody become obese, but under the NHS guidelines, it's not as straightforward as just being lazy and overeating. The NHS treats obesity with a wide range of programs, so it's a whole system approach rather than just treating the actual problem of being overweight. It's treating what causes being overweight, be it a psychological issue, with some people literally nothing more than the whole idea of overeating and not moving enough. For those of us who do believe that obesity is a self-induced illness, I can very much understand why we would believe that treatment shouldn't be on the NHS. But this opens the floodgates for any self-induced illness and its treatment on the NHS. So, for instance, if you enjoy partaking in playing football on a Saturday, rugby on a Sunday morning, combat sports, any type of sporting activity, for instance, any injury or illness that comes from that sport, should we also class that as self-induced? Nobody has forced you to play football, rugby, partake in BJJ, grappling, injuries such as dislocations, breakages, as such. Should those also be considered self-induced and not treated on the NHS? As a combat sport athlete myself, I can remember back in the day that we needed to cover our own medical costs pre-fight, and usually the promoter would provide insurance and the possibility of private healthcare following the fight. So some promoters do put that in place, but if not, should we also class that as self-induced? The argument then becomes an issue of the intention of playing rugby, staying fit, the social interaction. The whole purpose of it is enjoyment, but we also see it as a means of getting fit and staying fit and healthy. So where we could always argue that the idea of being obese, sitting on your bum, overeating, the intention of staying fit isn't there. It would be the same argument in the case of smoking. Should smoking related illnesses be treated on the NHS? the intention of smoking is nothing more than addiction to nicotine, where partaking in a sport and then becoming ill or injured from the activity, the intentions are different. So my personal opinion is a tough one. We have to treat it as a medical condition. Like I said, it's not as straightforward as people sitting on their asses all day long and eating non-stop. There is a psychological element to it, possible disabilities. So I think we need a harsher criteria in order to categorize somebody as obese. There needs to be certain methods or implementations put in place to catch people, or basically rescue people before they end up in the depths of obesity when these illnesses start taking place. So for instance, diabetes, heart conditions. So it's difficult with a diet. Just how shockingly bad the NHS's state is in at the moment. So we could put these parameters in place to stop people from falling through the net, but without the funding and the money being there and the programs being there, then I suppose it's a catch-22. We need to treat these people, but there's no money to treat these people. So, like I said, it's a vicious circle. It's a vicious loop. So yeah, it's a tough one. I have got an issue with those of us who do keep ourselves in relatively good shape, being punished, so to speak, for those who don't. So such things as sugar tax. That has affected a fair few people. Few people have voiced their opinions on that. And then also stuff like waiting lists on the NHS. Would there be less waiting list if obesity-induced illnesses weren't treated, such as, and even smoking-induced illnesses weren't treated? But then the argument would fall back on any injury or illness coming from all self-induced activities or illnesses. So, like I said, it's such a wide topic. You would end up down a rabbit hole looking at stats of where the money's being spent, who's more of a hindrance to the NHS than somebody else, where the money's been wasted, where the money could go better to, maybe like, again, opening leisure centres, again, community centres, grassroots football on weekends, coaches, preventative methods rather than waiting for the problem to arise and then trying to tackle it with both feet and not touching the sides. Because it is, I can imagine it being such a difficult situation to come back from, not only physically of losing the weight, everything from social interactions and the huge psychological effect of being overweight, like I said, possibly being bullied, being looked down upon society. So, like I said, it's such a huge topic. And again, my opinion changes every now and again, as it's such a emotive topic. But for me, I think we do need to have a set boundary over the medical condition, disease of obesity, and that of self-induced obesity, of being lazy, overeating, overconsumption of food, and not looking after yourself. So yeah, guys, that's my 2 pence. It has been a bit of a long video, and I've and add a fair few bits through it all. But yeah, let me know what you think. Feel free to comment, feel free to DM me, let me know your thoughts. And yeah, hope you all have a cracking Friday.